another edition of the Traction Reaction Podcast. I'm Steve Zautke, and joining us from Orlando, Florida, it's Eddie LePine. And a big weekend in Sebring, of course. We've got the 12 hours of Sebring, but also the 1,000 miles of Sebring, the WEC, the Sebring 1000, World Endurance Championship, and it's the big debut of Ferrari. And last year, this year they got 37 cars. It's an increase over last year. Who are some of the teams and of course, Ferrari is the big news, isn't it?
Sebring this week, the 1,000-mile race, the first race for WEC this Friday at noon. It's very exciting. We got Ferrari's debut. It's been 50 years since they've raced at Sebring in the prototype and the main class for Le Mans this year at the 24-hour race. We also have Porsche returning to prototype, Cadillac, Peugeot has made a return. Glickenhaus will be back. They almost won last year, and the defending champions, Toyota. It's an incredible prototype field for this year at Sebring and the build-up to the 100th anniversary of Le Mans.
Yeah, this is a big deal. Ferrari returning to the prototype division. When people think of Ferrari and racing, of course, they got Formula One. But if it's not Formula one of the iconic cars they think of course, is the 512. You had the movie Le Mans with Steve McQueen and everything. The 330, all those. If it's not a Formula One car, they definitely harken to one of those classic, iconic prototypes that ran at Le Mans and Sebring and elsewhere. So this is a big deal, and it's important for Ferrari on several levels, not only on a global level, but also the market in the U.S., isn't it?
Ferrari, they've talked about for years coming back to Daytona, which that looks like the direction that they want to go, back to the heyday. When Mario Andretti drove and won at Sebring in 70, and then at Daytona with Jackie Eakes. And here we are 50 years later. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal globally. Italy's very excited about it. Sports car racing caters to the people that drive these cars on the street, and that's what brings the crowds in. F1 is just more of a exclusive club, and they let people, meet the drivers. They have autograph sessions. They'll have pit walks. And it's just definitely a different atmosphere, too. And we'll probably see in excess of 150,000 people this week at Sebring for this event.
It's a huge event. And for anybody, for me, it's a bucket list event. You got Daytona, of course, Indianapolis, and Sebring's right up there. It's a special event. The people that weekend certainly make it. When I worked for the SVRA, we had an event weekend the weekend prior, and when we were packing up on leaving, the campers were already starting to come in for the following weekend. It's almost like a Grateful Dead concert. They start coming in pretty early, but with the Ferrari. With WEC, you have a lot of former Formula One drivers that run, of course, like Daniel Kvyat will be back, Robert Kubica, I should say, and then who does Ferrari have driving for him in this race?
Well, this will be Antonio Giovinazzi's visit to Sebring. As I've talked to most of the drivers when they come here, going back to when Giancarlo Fisichella came here for the first time, Nick Heidfeld, Formula One drivers that, and went to sports car racing. And at first they're in a little bit of shock when they pull in the Sebring and they go, they look around because the atmosphere has never changed in 20 years of going there. And now with NASCAR purchasing the track, they want to make a lot of upgrades. And I'm seeing some slow upgrades, but they're talking about repaving the track, and it's just, the whole thing with Sebring is what it is. And as Dr. Ulrich once said, and I told you, he said 12 hours at Sebring is good for 36 hours at Le Mans.
Right.
And the cars just take an abusive beating at Sebring because they've never changed. There's a lot of bumps, a lot of cracks in the track. There's no forgiveness. And I think you're going to see the traffic is going to be just incredible for this race this weekend.
Well, that's part of the allure too. I mean, this track dates back to what, 1951 or 50, and of course it was originally a World War II training base for bombers for B-17s. And after the war, they used it for parking. And of course, there's still an active airport, small airport on there. It was always rough. I mean, it seems like you see videos of the 60s, it appears rough, and into the 70s and 80s, and that's true. I mean, the cars, that's part of the test of Sebring that makes it, sure, you have the 24 hours of Le Mans and 24 hours of Daytona, but like what Dr. Ulrich said, yeah, it is. You couldn't. I don't think the cars could. Well, they could, but they would certainly be abused if you ran those cars 24 hours on that track. So a 12-hour race at Sebring is more than long enough. But when you're there in person, you can certainly see and feel the rough and hear the roughness of the track as those cars are under braking, and you hear them slamming on the tarmac and bottoming out going into corners, and you can literally see the car shake and the movement and everything about it, and the drivers inside getting tossed around too. It is certainly, it's not an easy track.
And that's part of the
Yeah.
mystique, and that's part of the attraction of why these fans come. I mean, there's so many fans coming from all around the world because of this debut and this first race of Ferrari, basically. And we're getting into another era now with the 100th anniversary of Le Mans, that it's going back to the movie that just came out a few years ago, Ford versus Ferrari. It's Porsche versus Ferrari now. And it's just exciting to see what this has progressed to in such a short period of time, because we've seen it in IMSA at Daytona this year. And now we're seeing it at the WEC, and we're going to see the second race this weekend at Sebring for IMSA. And it's just thrilling to see Penske Porsche putting this big effort into it. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I'm not ready to say it's like the 1980s again, when IMSA was so hot, but IMSA and the WEC certainly have momentum behind them. And what you said about Ford versus Ferrari, I mean, we've seen the momentum that F1 has gotten with the Netflix series, and I'm not saying it's as big as that, but the Ford versus Ferrari and the allure, and given the series certainly a push, and we saw that in Daytona in the end of January, that it was such a popular event, and the ratings certainly showed that, and the attendance too. It will go through for the rest of the year, including places at Road America.
Well, I think it's going to. There's definitely, the drivers love to come to Road America. It's one of the best tracks in the world. Um, Plus, like you said, getting back to Netflix, the spinoff from Formula One, you're seeing it because these are Formula One drivers that are racing in sports car racing. Even going back to 2 weeks ago, you see it at St. Petersburg with the IndyCar series. I've never seen that many people. So I think Netflix is affecting other race series as well. And I think it's good for the sport.
Yeah, it certainly is, and these cars. There's I've been a critic of many of the new cars. I don't care what series it is. It seems like, in the past, cars were designed by designers and they looked fast. Now we're a victim, or we're a slave of the wind tunnel. And certainly the cars are quicker, but at least I tell you what, these WEC and IMSA cars, they certainly look a lot better than a lot of other series, and I think that's part of the thing. I'm a big proponent of a car has to look pretty for a lot of the fans to come out to the stands, and these are certainly beautiful cars, and that Ferrari is my favorite. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. What's your prediction? You think it's going to be a Porsche or a Ferrari, or?
I don't know. I mean, Cadillac was, I mean, it's just going to be a race of attrition.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to go with Toyota first of all, because they're the giants right now. They're the kings. So, I mean, I think you're going to have to just look at them. I think that they're going to be a favorite this week. But, as we saw last year, it was, if the race wouldn't have been red flag last year, I think that it could have been Glickenhaus winning. The small little U.S. team could have won that race last year. I really believe that could have happened. And I think we're going to be looking at this year, very possibly it's going to be definitely a survival of the fittest. I mean, who came prepared and who's not going to have a lot of problems. And, I know we said that at Daytona, and there wasn't a lot of problems. There was some, but not what they thought there was going to be.
That's true.
So I think it's just going to be who can survive the bumps. And I think it could be anybody's game. But I would definitely, if I was a betting person, which I'm not, I would say Toyota is definitely would be my favorite because they've been here, they know it, and they've been running these cars for 2 years. So
well, they've been in this part of the sport the longest of the teams that have returned. So yeah, they certainly have advantage. Eddie, we certainly appreciate it. Looking forward to it. And it's March Madness, of course, but it's also March Madness in Sebring. It's like I said, if you haven't been there, it's a bucket list event, and it is a party. So
well, and the WEC race just so happens to fall on St. Patty's Day.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be just a hopping place to be.
All right, Eddie. We appreciate it. You take care. We'll talk to you next time on the Traction Reaction Podcast. Don't forget to like the video and also subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it. Thank you.